Hey guys, what's going on? So we are doing another video. Today is Friday, as you know. Usually Friday we do the Friday market breakdown. So essentially we're just going to go through the pairs for the week. Didn't really get to start the week off strong just because I was really unwell, but as you can tell from my voice, I've recovered and we're looking pretty good. So jumping straight into it, we are going to be looking at the DXY. So the DXY is essentially looking really good. We are making this sort of slow momentum as we've been seeing over here, where we've had this sort of correction here, we've been pushing up. I think we're just going to slowly make our way up to this high, but the more corrective it is, the better it is, and then we can look for that potential short play to the downside is basically what I'm looking for. I think that would be a really nice gameplay, but we have to also understand that, you know, this can just push up, start to kind of squeeze at the top here, become a little bit more neutral, and then, you know, we start to make our way more aggressively to this high, and then at this point over here, this is when we could potentially be looking to go short. Obviously we won't be seeing such a sharp movement such as that, but you know, nevertheless, it's basically the gameplay that is on the table. So patience is very key at the moment. I think, you know, especially for being unfunded, I've kind of just realized as well, you know, there's so many opportunities, so many trades, but there's particular ones that really jump out to you, and those are the ones you really want to capitalize on. So I'm going to be extra patient with this. I think this will be one that's really going to be solid, so I'll have to just wait for that. There's no reason to really go any lower on time frame until we start reaching this override. The most sensible thing to do would just be to set an alert, leave it, and, you know, just go away, and then basically just wait for that alert to be triggered. So moving on to the watch list, we're basically looking at Euro US dollar. Euro US dollar is actually looking quite good at the moment. Now, I can't really catch the right angle for this, and I'm not going to really try force the market, but if I was going to be looking for something, it would more so be like this, and then I would look for the price of the market to kind of squeeze to this high to potentially get that short, but the odds are we're probably going to sell off in line with the DXY and just make our way to this low here. Once we make our way to that low override, we can then see if there's going to be a potential for the buy. As we saw with the DXY, obviously there's no need to set an alert on both Euro USD and the DXY, but if you are trading the Euro USD, then it may be more beneficial for you to set the alert on Euro USD opposed to the DXY. But because I'm correlating my pairs in order with the DXY, I would like to know when the DXY approaches that, because then it will then alert me to know that, okay, then I should be looking at my US related pairs. So even so, this is basically what I'm looking at. This is the override 1 and 2. Just going to wait for price to go there. If we do somehow make our way all the way back up here, then I could potentially be looking for a short play to the downside. And yeah, the next one is USD CAD. Now USD CAD is definitely looking very good. We've basically, as we expected previously, we were kind of looking at this little squeeze as, you know, potentially just a very sharp sort of squeeze low in terms of a bull flag up and push. It seems like we were able to kind of create this, which now gives me that confidence that, you know, in terms of this bullish move, we are aggressively moving to this point here. Do we aggressively push up and carry on going? We'll have to wait and find out. However, there is a probability and a possibility that I am looking at that we tap into this and then we sell off from there. So keep that in mind, bear that as a very good option, but as well at the same time this could form as a head and shoulders pattern as well. There could be a few variations. It's not really one that I think is going to be head and shoulders, I'll be honest with you. I think this is more so got the potential for it to just kind of catch you out on the wrong side, really start pushing up, maybe tap into this point over here and then push off. It doesn't have to go up this high. I mean, looking at the sort of size of that, it's about 100 pips away. It is fairly far away. It can extend and just keep going. However, the likely probability at this point is I'm just looking for it to really tap into this and then push off. In terms of the approach, it's very corrective. And this isn't the sort of price I would just be looking to go for a short immediately just because of experience. I think, you know, you just need to kind of read between the lines here and just understand that taking an entry like that can come with grave risk, and you don't want to just be jumping into any old trade. You want to be making sure that you're kind of mitigating risk as much as possible. Size it up, have a look. There isn't enough clarity for me to actually say that this is the best of quality trades at the moment. However, you know, there is the strong possibility that we do kind of just have that little push of the extension. We do tap into some sort of inflection point where this actually becomes the new inflection point for me at that point when we do break above. So once again, I'll be looking at this as a very good area for price to reject. However, understanding that we can just push higher and actually tap into this high as a higher value area. We can extend, tap into this inflection and sell off, or we can go simply from this area here. I think more so I'm more interested in this point here now, because looking how price is moving, I think that extra push is kind of what will really paint the picture for this player. Looking at it on the higher time frame, we are, you know, pretty much in that very corrective state here. But if we do start making it to this high and then we aggressively start moving to this low, feel that 1 2 3 near miss gap there would be no surprise, and then we could see that for another long play to this high. However, given how this is kind of shaping up, I'm interested to know, you know, how this really does play, because that is going to be a solid play if we do make it to this high. However, I don't think from this current price action we are going to be moving to that high immediately anytime soon. I think more so we would just be staying sharp, keeping a key eye on approach of this inflection point, and then when we do push above, even if we do push above a little bit and then we start to sell off, we'll keep an eye on that for sure and look for an entry in the way down. However, bear in mind we can always extend and push a little bit further. So that's basically it for USD CAD. I think it's a very solid pair. It looks pretty good as well, so I'll be keeping an eye on that one for sure next week. Euro Aussie, I think Euro Aussie is phenomenal. You know, yesterday we looked at it and we saw this entry over here. Unfortunately, typical Euro Aussie, you know, we pushed down, created a sort of pattern over here, and then we just extended up. You know, I got caught up into this and genuinely was thinking this would have been a solid entry, and it really would have, but you know, typical EA. And we didn't get that sort of entry over here at all. Just extended, tapped into this, and then just kind of sold off. Really and truly, this is solid though. There's a very good entry on the point here, and literally you could have squeezed it in tight, but you know, and there's the gameplay, and you would have been holding that probably down to this low. You would have been about 10%, and then probably taken out now for roughly around about 7%, so or less. But yeah, even so, really good trade. I am looking at this as a very corrective sort of middle section. However, we can still just push off. It doesn't really matter. I'm looking at this as the beginning of the push to the 1 2 3, where I would be interested to see this play. Is it a very possible that this is going to play and be a very good trade? I think the fact that we're kind of sitting over here, we haven't filled that low as well. It's a good sign. It's showing me that, you know, this can potentially trickle. We can tap into this and then have that push off again and have another good sell off. So that's one thing I'll be keeping an eye on. But if we look at it on the higher time frame, it does look like we could just be selling off from where we are now. There's enough there. If we look at it on the daily, we have a nice little daily retrace over there. We're basically on the next daily candle. If we get enough commitment, we can go. But on the weekly, it's not enough, and this weekly candle is going to close. And if this weekly candle closes bullish, we most probably can't and fill that wick, completing the 1 2 3, and then that gives us that head and shoulders end off play, sell off, great position all in all. So EA is going to be very, very nice, and I'm quite happy that I didn't really miss out too much on it, because, you know, at one point I was kind of thinking, I really missed that entry, and you know, it's going now, and sometimes it just doesn't give you an entry for quite some time, but it's now looking like it is going to shape up. And even so, if it does start to go, it does look like we might get something like this before we sell off. So, you know, I would really stay sharp for something like that, where I can essentially take a 1 2 3 to the downside, where this is something I would opt in for, a short play there to go down. So we'll have to wait and see now, but it's looking really good. Would I entertain a long position over here? I'll be honest with you, it's too late now. I think coming up to around about 3 o'clock, you know, swaps, spreads, weekend, all of that. I don't want to be holding a position over the weekend, really and truly, not at this point in time. So I think right now, if I was going to be getting involved, I would wait for that completion of this override or 1 2 3. I will set the alert on here just for extra precaution, because, you know, you never know, we might get some volatility. But it looks like on Monday the 7th of March, which is going to be Tuesday, we are going to be getting some high impact news as well. So, you know, that's quite good because that could also count as a catalytic for the push low. So we might get there, correctively squeeze sideways, and then this news just kind of pushes up more aggressively. We get to the third touch, and then we just start to pull back down eventually. So we'll wait and see. You know, a lot can happen over the course of 2 days, as we know, as we've seen over here. But yeah, we're essentially going to have to wait for that. So Euro Aussie is looking pretty good. Looking at the next one, which is GBP Yen. GBP Yen is also very good. I mean, we were looking at this 1, 2, 3 for ages, honestly, and the sell-off began. We didn't get the commitment, and we pulled back up. Had this extension pattern of a 1, 2, 3, and now it seems like we're pushing off, but it's a very difficult trade to be getting involved in for me, to be honest. You know, it's not my typical price action. It's not the sort of trade I would opt in for hands down every day. It doesn't really jump out to me and say, hey, this is a very nice trade. You know, we do have a pin bar here, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere for me, even though we do have this extension pattern and it's the top of that. So it kind of holds a little bit of weight, but at the same time, it's like I'm looking for more confirmation. And I think, you know, I just don't think I'll be able to take the entry on this. I don't think I won't be so switched on when the entry comes up, and I'll be thinking, you know, this is the trade. If we do squeeze low here, and then we come back up here, and then I might look for the short play. That's the only time I'd probably look for a short, but at the moment it's not really in anything of interest to me. You know, it would really have to jump out to me and say, hey, look, listen, there's a nice little squeeze back up to this high. At that high we get a nice rejection, maybe a push and a flag, and then we can go in for the short. That's the only time I'd probably want to entertain a trade with that as well. So, you know, it's just we're kind of trickling towards these highs again, and even though this is the target zone, I think it can just still get messy before we sell off. So for those reasons, it's just one that it doesn't become as high probability as it was previously when it was approaching these highs. But even so, I'm going to wait patiently and just see how that shapes up. It could be very nice, it could be very messy. We'll have to wait and see. Once again, just simply set an alert, leave it, and we'll come back and check it when we start nearing it. Sometimes if you're not so good with kind of just, you know, getting very quick and sharp with these, you know, you can always squeeze it a little bit lower so it kind of alerts you as it's approaching opposed to when it has approached. Gives you a little bit of extra time to kind of prepare yourself and so forth. But usually if I'm going to be taking a trade on it, I would have well prepared way before this it reaches the line anyway. It would just be for an extra alert on it anyway. Moving on to the next one, which is in the wildcards, CAD Yen. Now, CAD Yen, phenomenal. As we were looking at it yesterday, the very messy head and shoulders we were potentially looking at has looked like it's actually played out, which is really nice. So, you know, the only one negative compliment is we didn't actually reach this point of interest, which, you know, I was kind of just really waiting for that extra perfection, I guess. But we did have this, nevertheless, on this high. We had the head and shoulders. Not the cleanest, not the most typical entry I would have been looking for, hence the reason I didn't get involved. However, now we are looking at, you know, something like this. If we do get something like that, that could be a very nice short play. We would just have to wait and see and evaluate. I think this won't be ready till next week. It could shape up for high leverage swap, high spread hour. So this typically happens is it kind of shapes up, makes it look like it's ready to go, and then it kind of just gets tagged in around about swaps, and then everyone who's kind of positioned themselves, spread just goes crazy, taps them in, they get caught up with swaps, and then in the morning when market opens, once again spreads are very high, takes more people out, and then at the same time it then drops off or kind of just corrects a little bit further and then drops off. So for those reasons, don't get involved in the market towards the end of the market close unless it's like a, you know, phenomenal position and you've planned ahead for swaps and high spreads. But nevertheless, you know, I'd still stay focused on this. We can still come to this high. It looks like it's getting very messy in here anyway, but there is that head and shoulders aspect to it, just not the head and shoulders sort of pattern that I'd personally want to be getting involved in. We did have this extension within the pattern as we've been seeing across the board, like we just saw with GBP Yen. We had the expanding and then the extension of the expanding, and then we just kind of just went a little bit further and then dropped off. So you know, at the end of the day, there's some quality in here, but like I said, it's not my type of trade. It's not the trade that I'll be looking for personally. I wouldn't take this trade really. So I know some people would take a trade here and they would do that, but that's not the sort of entry I would take any day. So, you know, there's definitely trades to be taken, just doesn't mean you have to take them all. Kajen. Moving on to the next one, which is Aussie New Zealand. Now, Aussie New Zealand it's also one of quite a favorite. I think what's becoming more probable now is that we're going to come back and retest this override, this section down here. I feel like we're just going to come and tap into that, and then we might sell off. Bearing in mind, if we look at the higher time frames, we haven't really tapped into anything very significant for this to really come back all the way. However, keeping a good eye on it on the daily, we can see that, you know, in terms of a daily, it does look like we are pulling back aggressively to the override section. If we look at it on the weekly, I want to see how this candle closes. Do we get more aggression with Aussie CAD during the evening, and then we kind of just go bearish pin bar close? Because even with the bearish pin bar close, it's very probable we'll come back down and fill this wick, tap into this low and go up. But looking at it on the 4 hour, the position to the short has now been completely annihilated. You know, there was this possibility on the 1 hour, you can see it a little bit more clearly, that we had this forming. However, any signs of this really playing out has really been blown out the water now. So there was this, which I think thankfully I didn't even want to entertain at all, but there was this sort of position that I think could have definitely been looked at for the evening star, and that short play was there. But then again, I think at the end of the day, with this bigger structure now happening, I think this is even better, because we're going to see some really good opportunity in here. So definitely worth keeping an eye on this as well, but I don't think this will be on watch for next week. Personally, I think it's just not really the sort of price structures I want to be getting involved in at this current moment in time. The next one I'll be looking at is Australian US dollar. So the forecast we had is definitely on point. It's nowhere near ready. I guess it was one that I put on watch in hope that maybe we would shape up and create something very nice. It just unfortunately wasn't ready now. It will be ready soon, just not now. I am looking for something more so like this, where we kind of just correctively squeeze, we tap into some sort of zone here, and we go. At the moment, we are still moving to the upside very correctively. I'm not going to really be entertaining any sort of trade at the moment. I would keep it very simple. Keep it very simple. Mark on this as an override. Understand that this is an inflection point just above it. But we can go from the override as well. Inflection point just above it. And yeah, just keep it like that and just wait and see what happens. And if there's an entry, there's an entry. If there isn't, there isn't. It does look like that could be a very good sequence play to the low as well. So in terms of a risk reward, I think that could be very much solid. Yeah, it could be about 12% on the table there. So we'll have to wait and see how that shapes up. But it looks good. Knowing this tip, yeah, we have to wait and see. And the next one is Aussie CAD. Aussie CAD, obviously, as we can clearly see, is very similar to Aussie US dollar. We are looking at inflection point to inflection point. I am looking for this to potentially just kind of reach this point here. Perhaps maybe even extend a little bit further up to this point. Not so much. And basically just fill this and then sell off from here. So it's a very simple play. We want to see that kind of scoop. Tap into this, push a little bit up, sell off from there. If we do get that, that would be a really nice play for the short. And that's essentially going to be in sequence with this as well. So it's a very simple play from A to B. That's basically what I'll be looking for. So keeping it very simple, really. A 1, 2, 3 to the downside there. And the next one is Euro New Zealand dollar. Euro New Zealand dollar is looking very good. One I really do like as well. There's the possibility that we are going to tap into this override over here, which is what I really am interested in. However, there's that inflection point there, the override here, but we have to understand that when we do go to the higher time frame, we do have the possibility for left shoulder head, right shoulder. What could possibly happen here as well is that we actually extend, push further, and we retest this high over here, and then we swap. I know that it's not your most typical, but we have to understand that it's always a possibility as well, that we just gravitate, we tap into the liquidity area here, and then we short. So keep that in mind, but the head and shoulders is really the gameplay that I'm really keeping an eye on, because I think that is going to be the one to really watch out for. But bear in mind, we do have the override over here. We don't have to come to the left shoulders high, and we can just sell off from there. So simple, nice and easy. That is basically my Euro New Zealand outlook. And then New Zealand yen. New Zealand yen has been phenomenal, has had a really nice short. So we had the override point here. We came up with a 1-2-3, didn't quite fill this 1-2-3, didn't have to. We came in with a pattern within a pattern to the override, coming in with that 1-2 near miss 3. Came to the third touch, we did kind of correct very correctively, and then had that impulse up, and then correctively squeezed to break the high and then push lower. There was some entry within there as well, but not my typical entry. And basically we've begun that short move. Looking at it on the higher time frame, it is in sequence for that short play, so I would keep an eye on this for sure, because this can aggressively start moving to the downside and potentially even make it to this low here. So that's basically it for my outlook this week. If you did enjoy the video, please hit the subscribe and like button, drop a comment below as well, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you, and I'll catch you in the next video.